undertrained and overgeared. Some soldiers on the front line have it bad. But lucky for you, if you die, the mega corporation you work for will get you back on your feet and back to work in no time. Just don't lose your head out there, soldier. This week on Scheduled for Launch, join me, Zach Walsh, as I talk with Tony and Dave of 23rd Century Productions about Battlelords of the 23rd Century, 7th edition. Take on the role of soldiers in deep space, fighting to protect the galaxy or fund your own dreams. With a long history in this game, there's something out there for everyone. We talk about military themes and making a game compatible with another system. Welcome to Scheduled for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I am very excited to be talking about a really interesting game that's been around for a little bit, but I'm excited to see more of it. And joining me is two of the creators this week, so thank you for joining me to talk about Battlelords of the 23rd Century, Tony and Dave.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for having us.
So this is kind of a really big IP, and I'm excited about, and I say big in a loose sense because a lot of people haven't heard about it, even though it's really cool. There's actually some guys down at one of my local game stores who play Battlelords, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about it and talk about it.
Yeah, it's Battlelords has been around, 31 years now. It started in 1990. It was written by a guy named Larry Sims, who was a U.S. Army vet and ran a game store in New York State. And over those 30 years, the amount of material for the game has just grown and grown and grown. It's changed hands 3 times. We're the third company to helm the Battlelords brand. And we're excited to bring it to everybody in its newest edition.
I'm excited to learn about it, too. But before we really dive into what Battlelords is, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. My name's Tony Oliveira. Around here they call me Executor. We've all got call signs. And it's because I'm a bit of a taskmaster, and my job is to keep everybody on track and working.
My name's David Saruco. My call sign is CDO. It's OCD, but in the proper alphabetical order, as it should be. One of the jobs I have is editing, so I'm the one who says, that thing's 2 pixels off to the left. What do you mean it's 2 pixels off to the left? Zoom in, you'll see it. You can see that? Yes, couldn't you? When they do those OCD quizzes, I'm like, so when do the hard questions come?
Oh my goodness.
And every once in a while, people have fun messing with me, Tony, and send me this thing. It's like, oh, look at this beautiful pattern, except there's this one tile that's in the wrong spot. There's all this field of white, and there's one in the black, and the black and the white are flipped, and you're like, yeah.
I got to keep his editing skills sharp.
Yes, that's what he says.
So you two were just mentioning, actually, briefly, that this is the third time that Battlelords has kind of changed hands. You're the third people to kind of have this one, and the 4 of you who work on this game actually wear a lot of hats when it comes to that. But before that even started, how did you all meet and start working on this together?
I picked up Battlelords in early 90s at Gen Con from Larry, the original author, and loved the game, played it through college. Dave and I met at college, and I introduced him to the game. We'd done martial arts together for years and years, and eventually after college we kept training because we were in the same city, and we ran into Kurt, who is one of the other people who helps. And Kurt was at the martial arts school where we moved to, and we introduced him to it. And he was hooked after that. So that's sort of how we all learned about the game.
It's certainly an interesting thing, too. This game is super cool, and there's a lot going on with it, even just from the quick start guides that I've seen. But before we even really dive into mechanics or characters or the story of it, what is Battlelords of the 23rd Century?
Dave, I'll let you take that one.
I like to say, we start with the simplistic military sci-fi. That's kind of, as Tony mentioned, it was started by an Army veteran, so it really started with a heavy dose of military and science fiction. So I like to start by saying there's a lot of genres that they kind of feel very similar. It's a very dark and gritty kind of a universe. It's not a glasses half full kind of a universe. It's
No.
we don't have OSHA here. We don't need that. We'll just get another person if they fall off. We don't care about railings kind of a universe. So we have things. I usually say, if you can be in Starship Troopers kind of a mode. So if that feel works for you. If you like Fifth Element, that kind of a feel works for you. You could do that. If you want to go more like Ocean's 11 or James Bond, but in the future, that could work for you. Or Firefly, Serenity, anything where you're kind of out on the frontier on your own, or Guardians of the Galaxy where you're just kind of out on your own out there trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Those are all, ways that Guardians of the Galaxy is a little too, clean colored and a little bit too happy, but you get the general feel. It's a dark, gritty Judge Dredd. I mean, we're talking Judge Dredd kind of gritty. People die. The corporations run everything. They don't care about you. You're just the latest number added to the roster out of millions, and they're happy to have, like Zorg, they're happy to fire 500,000, even if they only need to fire 50,000. So you got to remember that if you're not looking out for yourself, no one else will.
Mm-hmm. There's a layer of dirt and grime over the universe of Battlelords.
Yep. The artwork spec has 3 Gs: grit, grime, and graffiti. Everyone personalizes their own stuff with spray paint and whatever else, and things are not clean. Aliens, how all the equipment they have, it very quickly becomes dirty and used, lived in. Same kind of a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And given the flexibility of the system, I like to bring people to that because it helps frame what is the framing for the gameplay they're going to choose. Because if you're going down a framing of, say, Starship Troopers, then you're probably soldiers. You're probably given your equipment and your training, and you're going to work in one kind of a context.
Yeah.
If it's more, say, Fifth Element, it's a bit different. You may have a group of people who don't have the same skills and equipment. If you're out on the fringe just trying to survive, different set of guidelines there. If you're kind of going more piratey, again, if you're going to go more into espionage. So picking that framing helps because the gameplay in the system is so flexible. It's helpful to ground in what kind of gameplay you're looking for.
Yeah, I think Battlelords of the 23rd century, it's one of its major strengths is that flexibility for options, because there are a lot of sci-fi games out there, there's a lot of fantasy games out there, there's a lot of sci-fantasy games out there, but you're always kind of in those roles, or you have a certain expectation for where you can go. Battlelords seems really open-end, and something that this game offers is right now there's the classic version. This is 7th edition, correct?
Correct.
And then there's going to be the other version of Battlelords, which is based on the Savage World system. Do you want to talk a little bit about designing basically the same game in 2 different systems?
Yeah, when we got to sort of the keys of the kingdom with the brand, and we wanted to develop a new edition, our focus was really streamlining and clarifying the 6th edition rule set to make 7th edition. We wanted to keep what made Battlelords, and it is a simulationist system. It's a bit crunchy for some people, but the people who like that, the synergy of being able to dig in and find cool combinations, they love that. But there's a whole set of gamers who are not into that. So we decided relatively early on that we also wanted to port it over to something that was a little less crunchy, and Savage Worlds was a great fit for that. We looked at a bunch of different systems and decided on that one, and we have been developing it ever since, and we're about ready to kickstart.
And this won't be, obviously, your first Kickstarter. You just recently successfully kickstarted Fully Armored. What exactly was Fully Armored, and what did you learn from that that's going to be being brought into the Savage Worlds Kickstarter?
Dave, you want to take the first half of that question?
Sure. One question, 53 parts. So one of the things about the universe, it's not like D&D where you have standard classes and you have sort of a standard level progression of you get these skills or you get these powers or whatever. It's very much skill based, and so the progression is a lot more granular. And a lot of progression really comes in equipment, and funding is a bigger portion of progression. And frequently you find a lot of fun can be had in having people that are over-equipped and under-skilled. You have all these really cool toys, and you really don't know how to use them very well, which can be hilarious. So by bringing together more equipment options, which is the intent of Fully Armored, you get a better range of things. The core rules is a svelte 5.5 pounds, roughly 2.5 kilos, if I remember correctly.
Oh my gosh.
we had to cut, yes.
Wow, that's a lot.
Doubles as self-defense weapon if you're at home. Somebody came in the house. I just hit him once. I'm going to take you in. We threw the book at him. He died. So we had no room, believe it or not, for all the toys. And in previous editions, they had a lot of toys in a separate book. This is similar to things they've done in the past. And so there's an expansion on armor, an expansion on guns, and an expansion on all the other stuff you need to do all the various things you could do. And with the original core rules, we tried to give everyone a flavor of low-powered gaming, where you've got on the pointy stick, 22 caliber pistol kind of side of things, or maybe a laser pistol if you're really cool, all the way up to you've got mechanized battle armor and you're basically walking around in quasi-mecha with rockets and massive guns and tank guns. I mean, you've got really big gear. So we tried to give a bit of a flavor of each, but you don't have the room for as much variability. And Fully Armored really bakes in for each of the core types of weapon systems a lot of breadth and depth. So you've got a lot of different options. And that's kind of handy because there's a certain amount of the gameplay for people who really like to get into it that kind of goes back to things that you see in games like Magic the Gathering, where one system may be fine in certain situations, another system may be fine in other situations, but you put them together and all of a sudden you get kind of, you unlock another ability between the two of them where it really works well together. The first person hits this person's armor, the armor's value goes down, and the next person hits them with a laser, which normally wouldn't be a big deal. That guy wasn't worried about that laser until all of a sudden he realized his armor's gone. And now he's starting to die for cover, but it's too late.
So it's really about synergizing your equipment then.
Yes, there's a lot of synergization of equipment that goes on in this. It really encourages people to look and dig into the rules and how things work. You don't have to, but if you like that, there's a whole hook for people that like to figure out ways to optimize.
That's so cool.
And then in terms of porting the weapons over to Savage Worlds, because Savage Worlds is a simpler system, it loses a lot of that granularity, and it was a bit of a challenge in figuring out when you're losing the number of stats or values that define what a weapon can do, how you can differentiate certain weapons that in Battlelords are relatively close, but in Savage Worlds the stats would essentially be the same gun. So that was a bit tricky, but I think we managed it with Savage Worlds.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people do know a little bit about Savage Worlds and know that it's quite often a game that people use to port or hack other games to make them a simplified version. But there's still that level of, compared to other really hackable systems, it's still like a little bit easier to get that gritty tone in there. So I'm guessing that kind of helped play into why Savage Worlds was the choice for porting.
Yeah, they have the, I kind of joke, they have the optional gritty rules in Savage Worlds. And the default setting in Battlelords, as I tell people in this quote, Savage Battlelords book, it's like, yeah, just turn that on. Because it's a gritty setting. And one of the things Battlelords is known for is our critical hit chart, which is,
this I do know about.
Military sci-fi. It's those are all sort of battlefield injuries that Larry came up with and had experience with. So, and again, those were ported over to Savage Worlds, and they can be a little graphic and certainly debilitating for your characters. But in Battlelords, as long as you don't lose your head, as long as the brain's intact, they can always grow you a new body. So, tell everybody, don't lose your head, and you'll be okay. Dark, as Dave, you might have gotten from Dave's earlier comments, dark humor is one of the elements of Battlelords as well. There's quite a bit of dark humor.
Actually, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Was one of the things explicitly written in the Battlelords Quick Start, at least in both versions, is its themes. One of them being dark humor, and there are 5 core themes that you all written into these things. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the themes and really what those add to Battlelords?
Sure. As soon as I find the unmute button, there we go. The first one you mentioned was the dark humor, and as we mentioned, it's in there for 2 reasons. One, if the game is too gritty, then it becomes not fun. And the other reason it is in there is because it's military sci-fi. And in real life, soldiers use dark humor to cope with a lot of the stressful and horrible things they have to experience. So it's also a thematic element of the game.
Yeah.
One of the themes is in the trenches. A lot of times these characters are considered expendable by their mega corporate employers, and they're using weaponry built by the lowest bidder, and they're just making do. So that, as Dave mentioned earlier, is kind of gritty, and sometimes you just have to do what you can. The second theme, or I guess third theme, would be overcoming speciesism and stereotypes. We've got 14 species. We don't call them races. We're not Dungeons and Dragons. We've got 14 species in the game that you can play, and they don't all get along. Some of them have been at war with each other in the past, and now they are forced to essentially play nice because they're facing a bigger threat, the looming invasion of the arachnids and their techno-organic hordes. But a lot of them still hold grudges, and a lot of them sort of stereotype each other. All the ram pythons are big and dumb. All the Thentari are untrustworthy. Well, that one is probably true, but so they have to learn to work around these stereotypes, because at the end of the day, if they're going to hold a grudge and not function as a team, they're all going to die horribly. So part of it is overcoming that speciesism or racism against the other species and making it work. The last 2 themes are sort of making it big. Everybody wants to become a quote Battlelord. That's how you've made it to the big time. And as the 2 elements Dave mentioned earlier are sort of the runaway capitalism, like in Fifth Element. Mega corporations own and run everything in the Battlelords universe, and making it big is overcoming the sort of the haves and the have-nots. The megacorp CEOs and high-level managers can buy and sell planets, and you're a grunt in the trenches trying to get your laser to work when the arachnids are coming. So those are sort of the 5 major elements of the game, and then Dave already covered the 3 sort of artistic, visual elements of the game. When we had the artists do the art, we wanted them to cover those visual elements of grime, graffiti, and tons of gear. A lot of the characters you'll see are sort of festooned with gear.
Yeah. Actually, you just mentioned that art there, and I wanted to talk about that. This art is incredible. There's so much expression, and you can really catch that tone from just like looking at these pieces. What went into finding the artists for these?
Bourbon. I'd say bourbon.
Bourbon.
I'd say bourbon.
I get that question a lot when we first approached our fulfillment house about carrying Battlelords. That was one of the first questions out of their mouths. We're like, where did you find these artists? And sadly, there's a website that is no longer around, but there's a website called conceptart.org where you could post basically jobs. Like, I need somebody to draw spaceships or guns. And
Yeah.
you would get blasted with resumes for all these people who wanted to do that. You could just flip through them. Oh, I like that guy's guns. I'll hire him. And sadly, that's not around anymore. But the other thing I did was I would get on Instagram and ArtStation and DeviantArt is the other one, and just look for, I do keyword searches. And I would find artists I like, and I would contact them. And only about a quarter of the time did it work out. But when it did work out, we've got some amazing artists that otherwise would probably have been undiscovered. Kiki Kernia, who does all of our cover art, it was pretty much an unknown before then, and she's fantastic. Admira Waija, who does some pieces in the book, now works for Marvel and DC. So it wasn't long after we found him that people were like, "Wow, this guy's really good." So we're definitely proud of the art, and we think it looks great.
And we've gotten lucky. We've been able to also pull in some people we normally wouldn't have thought we'd get to showcase. So Barlow's, if you know who Barlow is, he decided to do a piece of art for us. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
Wayne Barlow.
Yeah, there's just some incredible pieces in here, especially all the species. They're different, just like they have so much personality to them. You can kind of get them. I was talking to Tony before we started, and I love the Scissorak, which you said actually from changing editions there was some backlash about originally.
Yeah, we were going to make them more alien looking. Part of moving from 6th edition to 7th edition was to pull out anything that was what I like to call fantasy inspired. We wanted it to be sort of a true science fiction game, not space elves and space dwarves. And so the Scissoraks, which look like giant cats, we were going to redesign them to make them more alien. And when we posted our sort of prototype art, they were uniformly loathed by all our fan base. We're like, fine, we'll leave them giant cats and chalk it up to convergent evolution.
It's just so interesting.
And I just wanted to kind of focus in on the comment for us real quick a second. It's just that there is actually an awful lot of science behind all this stuff. We really do start from the science things and then scale it back towards fun. So sometimes we do things that's just like, yeah, we're going to wave a hand on this particular situation. But we start off with what makes sense and then what's playable and fun.
Yeah, Dave can probably tell you the joules of energy generated by most weapons. Kurt can tell you the biochemistry behind the respiration physiology of most of the species. There is a lot of math and science on the back end that the players will never see.
I did all the modeling to figure out the airspeed velocity of the various starships in atmosphere, to figure out what their limit is in atmosphere. Their engines just only get them so fast in atmosphere, and that's how long it's gonna drive. That drives how long it takes to get to orbit, because you got to get through the atmosphere to get to orbit. Once you get out there, then the engines are like, "Oh, there's nothing to stop me now!" Whoosh! They go fast.
Fortunately for the players, the only thing they're going to see is this is how long it takes you to get into orbit, so they don't have to do any of that math.
Exactly.
6 hours. Yeah, 15 minutes.
Yep.
But that also that's some in-game universe building that just like it's one of those gritty things that players don't really see on the front end. Like a lot of that back end work that people put into it. Like a lot of sci-fi games think about that too, like to an extent at least. But I just think that's one of those details that gets missed when people are looking at the games that are made.
Yeah, we have some fans that I think we've sort of wowed on our Discord who have asked questions like, can I do this with the armor? And I was like, well, let me get out the spreadsheet. And I'm like, okay, that'll be half a kilo. And they're like, how did you know that? And I was like, well, I calculate how much each piece of that armor weighs down to the, centigram. Like,
yeah.
Really? I was like, yeah, but you don't have to deal with that on the front end.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, we've actually talked about creating, older than Dirt here. Dirt was pretty cool, though. When it came along, it made it a lot easier to grow food. So, way back in the day, GDW, makers of Travelers, had created what they called design sequences of various things, and they included some of their main books, like High Guard was book 5, and that gave you a more complicated system for generating ships. Well, you also look at the Striker rules, and they had really complicated rule sets for doing all kinds of weapons and armor, and tanks, and all kinds of things. So one of the things we keep kicking around is, when we're not, somewhere further down the line after we get to the current 5 or 6 projects we've already got queued up, do we start looking at releasing some of these design sequences so if people want to tinker, that they can, have things they can tinker with.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too, because this game is so rooted in science and the math and the numbers and stuff. It looks great, and from what I can tell, it plays great. I know that the campaign that's been running at the game store has been going for a bit, so something's going right with this game.
Yeah, we always recommend to people when they're starting, because it is such a crunchy system in modern day gaming. A lot of people are used to lighter weight games, and this is very much a product of 30 years ago, where games were much more involved and started kind of more from a tabletop miniatures kind of a perspective. To start with quick start rules, just start with real simple. It's a percentile-based system. Roll under it, you're good. Make up a reasonable, rational thought process around what kind of a penalty or bonus applies, and go with it. And then don't spend too much time on it. And then as people have an interest to add in additional rules, add in more fun. So we usually start with the crit chart. That's kind of one of the first things we'll throw in there, because it's just kind of fun. Oop, you blew their head off. They're dead. That kind of stuff.
Back the Savage Worlds edition when we kickstart that, because that will, again, the whole point of us doing that was to have a lighter weight rules mechanic for players who wanted to play in the Battlelords universe but didn't necessarily enjoy sort of the crunchier games, and then they could play it with the Savage Worlds rules.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too. We've been throwing a word around a lot. I actually think we've missed touching about it though. What's a Battlelord?
It's funny. You should have, the game's been called, obviously, Battlelords of the 23rd century since Larry invented it in 1988. But it wasn't until 7th edition that we really defined what a Battlelord was. We've been playing the game for years, and we're like, they never really tell you what a Battlelord is. It's just sort of like a super cool mercenary. But so that was one of the things we fixed in 7th edition, was we defined it. Essentially what a Battlelord is it's kind of like a super sheriff. With the Alliance being so vast, the Alliance Navy cannot be everywhere at once. So what they do is they find these either soldiers or Marines or mercenaries who are exceptional combatants, particularly when they are outnumbered. And what they do is they name them Battlelords, and it is a rank that is outside the normal chain of command, and they give them a crew of battle knights who assist them, and they give them their own personal war cruiser, and they're assigned a territory to patrol. And if any trouble shows up in that territory, it's the Battlelord's job to deal with it until the Navy gets there, because the Alliance is so vast, the Navy can't be everywhere all at once, and the Arachnid invasions are a bit random and haphazard because of the way their faster than light travel works, so they can sort of end up anywhere, and which could be a bit of a surprise. So these Battlelords patrol the territory, and their job is to basically enforce the law and keep people safe there. But they are also a bit of celebrity. If you read some of the books, we have some Battlelords who really are happier hobnobbing in bars and having gifts lavished on them than patrolling their territory, and some of the other Battlelords give them a hard time about that.
These are your sort of sci-fi heroes, like, for instance, like some people who might fall under this if they were in the Battlelords universe would be like Master Chief from Halo or Commander Shepard from Mass Effect.
Yeah, sort of the same concept, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you could also argue Frank Castle in a more gritty form as the Punisher. Because again, we're gritty.
Yeah, gritty. Definitely gritty. So,
just saying.
Doesn't get much more gritty than the Punisher, right? So.
Yep. Oh, you're guilty. Boom. Thud. Next, I think we got room on the docket for 3 more. Oh, how about Dead, Dead, and Dead? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, there we go. I'm done for the day.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the background information about what's going on in the Battlelords universe. And you brought up the Arachnid a couple times. What are they? Are they an old enemy coming back into this edition? Or what are the Arachnid and how recent are they in the storyline of Battlelords?
I think the Arachnids have been around since first edition.
Okay.
A lot of combat in Battlelords is mercenary versus mercenary, because the Megacorps own and run and control everything, and really the Alliance government is just sort of puppeted from behind the veil by the Megacorps.
Yeah, Runaway
they do
capitalism.
run afoul of each other, and occasionally it's this Megacorps mercenaries versus this Megacorps mercenaries. But you also run into the Arachnids, and the Arachnids, the name is Aknarin, is what the Eridani call them, which translates to mismatched horde. And when the humans heard Aknarin and saw what some of the creatures looked like, they're like, they're kind of spider-like. Let's just call them arachnids. But the arachnids have been around for a very long time. No one officially knows what they're pissed off about and why they're invading. But if you dig into some of the meta plot and behind the scenes lore, we sort of drop secrets on why the arachnids are so pissed off. And they have entire armies of techno-organic, genetically engineered minions that they use as troops. And it is a sort of Starship Troopers-y, where they have specific minions to do specific jobs. Some function as armored personnel carriers, some function as infantry, some function as shock troops. And that's who we refer to the arachnids collectively as that horde of these cybernetic monstrosities that you may run into. You don't want to run into, but you may run into them.
No.
Well, and even their ships. Some of their ships are techno-organic. So
I've always been a sucker for that. Techno-organic ships are so cool and terrifying. I just love the concept of them.
Yeah, it's hard to kill something that regenerates.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I think is really important too when it comes to making these sci-fi games, especially tabletop role-playing games, are your choices as a player. We've already talked a little bit about equipment, but what I think is really a strong point is the uniqueness of each of the species. So you have your species and your equipment. Are there any other character options that people get to choose from?
Skills. Lots and lots of skills. So each of the species has really got an archetype. So when people read the species description, there's kind of an obvious leaning towards a particular type of gameplay for that particular species. And that's somewhat intentional because it grounds people in, given how granular things are in the system, it's really easy to kind of get lost in all that because you can do a lot of different things and go a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
But that's why I recommend, we tell people, start off with kind of picking your genre. That kind of frames what makes sense, right? If you're going to go into an espionage role, building out a Frank Castle, probably not a good choice.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to go into a Starship Troopers kind of a thing where you're fighting the Arachnids, then you're probably not going to want to pick your Q, building a Q character that's really good at making gadgets. I'm like, yeah, it's not really a good fit, right? So just by setting that genre, that starts things. And by setting that genre, it also kind of tells you the skills you're going to want, right? If you're in a espionage kind of a world, you're probably going to be thinking in terms of things that help you sneak in or steal or hack computers or hack through security systems, or you kind of the ideas start to flow, right? It gives you a good brainstorming of these are the things that I'm probably going to find useful. If you're in a Starship Troopers kind of a mindset, then you're going to be like, well, I don't really care about whether or not I can intimidate people because I'm probably going to be shooting them. So I probably need guns. I probably need medical. I probably need demolitions. I'm out of skill points. Darn it. And once you get going, the nice thing about being skill-based and equipment-based is that, you may find, okay, we started off with a big battle about fighting off the Arachnids because they attacked this planet that was owned by our Megacorp. And now we're shifting gears, and now we're fighting another megacorp to see if we can steal their top scientist. Well, now you've got a little bit different kind of gameplay, so you can start to shift your skill sets as you grow your character in a different direction if you want. So lots of options there. And your skills and your equipment too. You can start to spend your money in a different direction to take you down a different path.
Yeah, classic Battlelords is not class-based. It's not. There are like Dave said, there are implied archetypes, but you're not set in stone. That's one of the things people like about the game, is because it's skill-based. You can make whatever you want, from bounty hunters to rock star, whatever you want to be, and you're not locked in. If you want to change it later, like he was saying, if it makes sense to have your pilot suddenly become a gunslinger, you can do that. And that's one of the things that we've carried over into the Savage Worlds version. We've got archetypes, and even in classic Battlelords, we've got the four main groups that we sort of flesh out: mercenaries, soldiers, spies, and pirates. And so you've got those four areas that we sort of focus on, but you can do anything in the universe. It's expansive. We've had people tell us, they play musicians and they just travel the universe getting into trouble, or bounty hunters, or, what have you.
I had one group that I ran that, as I was trying to test out Starship rules, we ended up with the group taking over a big ship and turning it into a cruise liner and running a cruise liner, which got interesting, but after a while, I don't know where we're taking this anymore, so we just kind of retired that campaign.
That's totally fair. Something that I like about skill-based systems, and I've played another campaign for another game with a skill-based system like that you can slowly grow up, is that it also lends itself to the narrative. It's like, all right, you're moving away from being, I don't know, my character is like a negotiator in my other game. So like if I was like a talking character in Battlelords, and then I started kind of making like this character where he's now becoming more of a pilot, I can do that, but it takes some time.
Yeah. So you can definitely make that progression change. It encourages people to think about where the game is going and start investing in the direction they want to be. But yeah, you can change on the fly too. Held some things back in terms of skill points. A lot of ways to play that.
Mm-hmm. It's also nice that the gritty world can kind of be offset with, well, like you guys said, so long as you don't lose your head, you can get body parts back, for instance. I like that offset.
Yeah, we used to say, it's not a question of if you die or when you die, it's how often and if you can afford to come back. And the company's quite happy to tackle.
Oh yeah, they'll get you a new body,
contract.
But we'll just offset that by adding a year to your contract to cover our costs.
So, Dave, Tony, is there a specific demographic that you think would really like this game?
I think anybody. I mean, that was one of the things that we did with 7th edition, is we really tried to expand the audience of the game. It has a huge following among military veterans, and the classic Battlelords rewards people who, as Dave said, like to dig into the system to find those synergies where, if I get this and this, they work really well together. But, really particularly with having two versions now, the Savage Worlds version and the classic version, if you want to run a story-based game, you can do it. If you want to run a combat-based game, you can do it. We tell people the Battlelords universe is expansive, and I would encourage anybody to, if you're not sure, download the Quick Start rules and give it a try. And as you've noticed, that at the very least, you'll get to see some really cool artwork.
Phenomenal art. So we're actually starting to run a little bit low on time here, but I got two questions that I left that I like to ask everybody who comes onto this show. And you can both answer this one, but what advice can you give to people who are looking to make their own game, but they're not really sure where to start? They don't know where to begin. What advice can you give to those folks who are wanting to create something?
I think the advice I would give people is reach out to other creators. Now, keep in mind, and this is sort of a sad state on the industry, the vast majority of them are going to blow you off. But there will be a few that help you. And Battlelords, at least the 7th edition, would not be here today if there weren't a few creators out there who were ahead of us that took their time to talk with us and sort of show us the ropes and explain how things went. And we owe them a lot. And one of the things I've been doing is paying that forward to new creators I run into, and I try and help them out where I can. But you have to understand that most people in the industry are not going to do that, particularly the big guys. One, they're busy, and two, they really only talk to the other people who they've known in the industry for decades.
Yeah.
There are some exceptions, obviously. But I would encourage everybody to join the IGDN, the Independent Indie Game Developer Network, and talk to Pete there, PDP. His last name is Petrusha. I probably mispronounced that. Apologies. They are a great organization of independent game designers, and they will help you. And they certainly helped us.
There are also conferences like Gen Con. There are seminars on how to kickstart things. They had the guys from Exploding Kittens talk about what they did to market. So crowdfunding has really changed the industry, right? It used to be you had to source everything. That's one of the reasons why art's gotten so much better, in my opinion, is because in the past it was like, well, how much can we pool up across all of us and throw at this and see if it's enough? And we're going to have to take a cut somewhere. Well, I guess art's going to take a cut. Now you can pitch your idea and go into Kickstarting mode, and if people fund it, go. Kind of a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. So if you really can put together your marketing strategy, really clearly articulate your concept. It's best if you're pretty far down the path with things, in our experience, because then it's not so conceptual, right? With all crowdfunding, there's always that risk that the product doesn't really get out the door. The farther you are down the path, the easier it is to show people that they're going to get something tangible at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So,
the last comment I would make, I would definitely second Dave's. Make sure you have something resembling a finished product, if at all possible. But the last comment I would make is I made a joke on the last podcast we were on, and it sort of fell flat. It was meant to be humorous. I don't know if they've got it, but I said the key to making a game is to be filled with blinding overconfidence. And what I mean by that is you're going to have people who tell you you're wrong, you're not going to be able to do that, that's a horrible idea. Just ignore them all and do it. Just do it. Kickstart that sucker, and you might make it big, but either way, you've put it out there for people to see, and someone will love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There was a really cool video of Stan Lee talking about the creation of Spider-Man. If he had listened to his editor, there would be no Spider-Man.
I did know that. Fun fact about that just doing it thing. The very first episode of Scheduled for Launch was with a musician friend of mine, and his advice at the end was strike while the iron's hot and shut up and just do it. And we've heard variations on that the entire time, and I'm so glad that more and more creators are just kind of going with that, because this podcast, this entire thing exists for the past over a year now, exists because that same person told me to just go and commit to making it. So to hear more people saying that is just really exciting to me.
Well, we're glad you followed his advice. And certainly for for game design, it's the barriers for entry are much lower now than they were 20 years ago. With print on demand, digital printing, and crowdfunding, it's so much easier to get it out there. So really, I tell you, the only thing holding you back is you.
I'll just kind of be the downer here to say, and it comes with work, right? Opportunities don't just happen. There's a lot of work behind all these things. So do jump at it. Do commit to doing it. Give yourself the grace to go, you know what? I need to take a break because I haven't had a vacation in 2 years. And that's okay too. But if you want to do it, just keep at it. Just keep doing it. You'll get there.
He just says that because he's the editor.
Yes, and I've got 3 more books to edit for Savage Worlds.
Oh my. Tony, Dave, where can people find out more about you and Battlelords of the 23rd Century?
We're on most social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook. We've got a Discord. We're on Instagram. I'm probably missing some social media. We've got a Facebook discussion group. So we're And our website is battlelords.com, or you can also get to it from the company name, 23rdcentury.net. And our products are available on Amazon. They're available through Studio 2 Publications. They're available through Indie Press Revolution. They should be at most of the conventions you go to, either at the Studio 2 or Indie Press Revolution website. And you can always ask your local brick and mortar store to order them. We're also available through distribution.
I'll just chime in with, and one of the cool things about this, talking a little bit, to kind of tie the last topic to this topic, because of how easy it is to enter into doing all this stuff and how easy it is to generate through social media interaction. It used to be when you had a question, it was really hard to get an answer. Now, we run a Discord, and people ask us questions all the time. We're like, here's how this works. And there's people who've been playing this game for a long time that are able to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know how this one works, and they can answer the question. So we have a growing community on Discord, and this is one of those ways where everyone can kind of just jump in with their ideas. We also encourage people to house rule things. If they want to do things a little differently, go for it. Mm-hmm. Have fun.
And at the end of the day, that's really what it's about, is having a good time in a system you enjoy.
Rule number one, have fun. If you're not having fun, why are you doing it?
Exactly. As always, audience, all the links for the socials and all that stuff, that's going to be down in the description below. Tony, Dave, thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking about Battlelords of the 23rd Century with me. This game's rad. I love it. It's so cool.
Well, we're glad you like it, and thanks for having us.
And audience, thank you so much for listening. Tony and David and the rest of the Battlelords crew, they are working super hard, and the Savage Worlds version is scheduled to launch on Kickstarter very soon, and possibly actually might already be up by the time that this episode goes live. If not, it'll be in the near future, and we will let you know then. Go out there, support them, pick up Battlelords. I'm sure you'll have a great time if this is your cup of tea, and it's definitely one that I'm going to look into. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to Tony and Dave for joining me this week to talk about Battlelords of the 23rd Century. I've had a little time to dabble in the character creator, and I've read over some of the quick start rules. It certainly looks like one of those games that I would love to have some friends play with me. It's really exciting. I'm excited to share it. Honestly, go check out the quick start rules for both versions of the core game and the Savage Worlds version, and go with which one you think will work better for your table. There's a lot of choices here, so if you really like building characters and fleshing out your world, this one's for you. And once again, thank you for joining me, listeners. We keep on finding more and more amazing creators, and it's been a lot of fun seeing everything that they come up with. And the best part is we keep on seeing the crew grow and more people joining us. So if there's a specific creator out there that you'd like to hear more about their project, let me know. I'll even reach out to them myself. Next week, I'm very excited to be welcoming back Moss Powers to talk about his game, Infinite Reverie, which is a JRPG-inspired TTRPG with a lot of nuance and heart. Until then, though, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one.